Cordell, how do you see innovation, improved data communication, and commuter rail change our relationships with one another and the future of our economy here in Northwest Indiana, Chicago, South Carolina?
You know, we have so many artificial barriers to connecting with each other. I often joke at the Ask Institute where we're conveners, and people pay a premium to be a human. You're literally paying a handsome price to go to Aspen and sit in a room with 60 people you don't know. I'm like, well, what's your neighbor's name? How about that? That'd be a good place to start. I'm not complaining, you know, we got a business to run here. But I think I've seen the change that this has wrought in Seattle, how it's unified these neighborhoods. You know, I bought a place right by where the rail would be. Hat tip everyone, who you think is going to go buy property there. It works out really well for us. And I met people I would have never met because I left the high rise in downtown Seattle and I moved to a neighborhood that was transitioning. And so imagine how many transitioning communities could benefit from this. How many more people can be connected, seeing possibilities in their lives once we start embracing alternatives to post-secondary success. Like, I love Notre Dame, I give every year, I watch all the games, but Notre Dame isn't for everyone. Neither is Purdue, neither is Indiana University. There are other ways of getting people to jobs, which is the goal of education. And so when you have no employers, we currently have 11.5 million open jobs right now. 4.3 million people resigned in August, ladies and gentlemen. We have a crisis right now with labor. And so we need to embrace other alternatives. And the innovators are going to force the issue. Because, like, I don't care what credential you have, can you do the job? Okay, that's a different conversation than saying, you know, entry-level role requires a degree and 3 years of experience. This is an entry-level role. Like, you have to start somewhere, right? This would give them a better start. This idea of saying, look, we need people. Our greatest national resource. We need people, so let's figure out ways to get them to jobs faster. And the rail is one way, and the alternate pathways are the other. I think they go hand in hand, and innovation is a result.
Gordon, in the room today, we have representatives of most of the city municipal governments throughout Northwest Indiana, mayors, council members, county council members, redevelopment commission members. And I know they want to understand what their role is in impact of urban planning and what would your suggestions to them and what they have to do to improve urban planning.
Well, that's a big question, but you know, I think it's important for us to talk about this corridor that we identify and we talk about is really not just a closed system, it's really the beginning of a much larger system. And it begins at every scale. You know, it's irrelevant as to whether or not we're talking about a campus or a community or a town or a city or a region, frankly. It's a scalable concept that I think as any official that has a responsibility for people and a city and assets, I think that they should be thinking about the role of technology in the future of the quality of life of their people. And I think it's very interesting that we're having a conversation today with all these people in the room where technology is actually beginning to drive policy. I'm not sure I can say that, but I think that, you know, once upon a time we were waiting for policy to set the path for all of us to move forward. And now what we recognize is that whether we act or not, the technology will move forward. So you have a choice. You are either a part of that future or you're not. And so from our position, I totally understand and agree with everything that I heard Cordell and Senator Young talk about in terms of traveling around the planet and coming home and going, holy cow, we gotta get moving. I think it's great to have conversations. My suggestion is act. That's my suggestion. Act on it. Let's get moving. Let's get this thing moving. We have the leadership to do it. We've blurred the lines and boundaries right now. We're thinking much bigger than we have in the past. We certainly have the resources. We do have the people. They're looking for a platform as to how they can plug into their futures. I'm a huge advocate for less talk and more action. So from that standpoint, I would say let's get together at whatever scale we can and think about this as a kind of unified and holistic vision and deliver it to those who can help us articulate it and do it.
Gordon, I'm a big believer in action speaks louder than words, so thank you for bringing that up. So please act out there, mayors, city council, etc. Senator Young, you earned degrees over your, multiple degrees over your educational career, including an MBA from the University of Chicago. As a Chicago Booth graduate, you'd be happy to know that the Chicago Quantum Exchange and the University of Chicago support this emerging technology research corridor between South Bend and Chicago. So why is it important for us to embrace this Greater South Shore initiative? And what actions would you recommend to the audience that we can propel this forward?
So look, our federal government is poised right now because we know our constituents are ready to heighten our investment in some of these key research areas. We've seen a downward trend in federal investment in the physical sciences, actual stuff you can touch and manipulate, technologies, and there's a real role for this federal investment. We created an aviation industry, arguably, in this country through this sort of investment that now spins off tons of value each year. So there's certainly economic history behind this. We have a number of assets in this area. We, of course, have our people. We have water. We've got fiber. We've got the transportation resources. But if we're not identifying ourselves as having common interests, which we do, and then establishing common goals, which you're in the process of, and then collectively harnessing our energies to accomplish those goals, we're missing a big opportunity, because it will be those communities, those regions around the country that are positioning themselves for excellence, which will be identified as the next hubs, the next Silicon Valleys, the next research triangles. And it's clear from the conversation today and to many of you here that all we need to do is, like a peacock, go out there and show the rest of the country exactly what we offer. And I think the resourcing will then follow. So to our municipal leaders, our business leaders, our other government leaders, I know Congressman Mervan certainly understands this because he's a co-sponsor of the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act. But I would say, in addition to the other action steps I mentioned earlier, do encourage, I want to reinforce, do encourage other members of Congress with whom you have a relationship, other United States senators, to be supportive of this effort during a time of tribal politics and a lot of divisiveness. This ought to be something that we can get behind.
Well, that's something you write a note down, or something you want to add to that at all, or?
You want me to show you what I'm writing down?
Absolutely, this is a discussion.
No, I love it because I think one thing that we have to really make clear is that we have all these assets. We can no longer function in silos. And the benefit of the work that we find is really connecting those systems and connecting those platforms. So it's one thing to have all these fantastic assets, but they're not really functioning as a unit. They're functioning in kind of isolated platforms, right? So the whole notion about what's the role of technology in the future, part of it is to ask questions that we currently are unable to answer. And so when we look at the kind of connected systems that we can achieve through technology, through business, private business, everything else, that is the role that technology can afford us to kind of homogenize or kind of understand the interrelationships of these systems. What does energy have to do with fiber? What does fiber have to do with those beautiful parks on the lake? What does the water system have to do with semiconductors and national defense? And what does all of this have to do where we want to propel our lifestyle over the next 10, 15, 25 years, into that future? That's the role that I think this room has, to try and understand that, to try and articulate that, put it together in a platform, and deliver it. I think it's entirely possible, by the way, and I'm just saying that because I cheerleader for the future. I think it is entirely possible. I think we are on the doorstep of doing this, and we see others playing with this. And I think the U.S. has to. We have to do this. And this is the perfect place to. I think when I look at the national picture, I think all the pieces are here. We just have to put them together.
And I agree, and I'd like to introduce a new term, and pull up the other AI, and this is ancestral intelligence. Let us not forget the role that the Midwest and the economies of the Midwest have played in our national history. This was the power engine of the national economy for a very, very long time. It used to be, auto manufacturing and other types of steel production, build all the highways, all the bridges. It's time to do that again. And it's going to look a little different now, but you've done it before. It's in you. It's part of the character of this region. And you just got to refine the pitch. Folks like Sarah are going to have to understand, hey, if this doesn't happen now, that hegemonic status that we've enjoyed for 75 years, it'll be something we read about in history books.
Well, that concludes our panel discussion today. We're on a time limit, unfortunately. I'd like to hear more, but I thought it was a great ending note. We have to act. We have to motivate, propel ourselves forward. The alternatives are not what we want to see, and I'm sure we'll do that.